At this point, every information portal is saturated with mindfulness content. But this show is a unique, unusual, curious take on mindfulness. Some of what you hear will be completely new to you. Let's dive in and take a look at the nature of the aware mind. I invite you to deepen your awareness so that you may be liberated and inspired.
We are here with Sarah Vallely, mindfulness teacher, coach, and author. Sarah has been teaching meditation and mindfulness for the past 2 decades, training and certifying others to teach mindfulness. Sarah is the author of 4 books. Her latest book is titled Tame, Soothe, Dwell, the 55 Teachings of TSD Mindfulness. On today's episode, we discuss a few different Buddhist concepts such as selflessness, liberation, and how our thoughts may impede upon these concepts. I'm Jacob Durasset. I'm here with Sarah Vallely. Sarah, how are you?
I'm really excited because this is our 40th episode. We've been podcasting for almost a year now. Our first episode was released on Christmas 2021. I think that's a real neat feeling to have published 40 episodes.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's to 40 more.
Ah.
They could only see your smile, Jacob.
Yeah. Consistency is key. We've done it for a year, every week for a year, pretty much.
Pretty much. Yay, us.
Yeah.
So today we are talking about this idea that our thoughts can imprison us. Our thoughts can limit us. This has been something I've been thinking about lately. It is very connected to the Buddhist teachings. Buddhist practice is based on the idea of becoming liberated. One of the ways that I interpret these teachings is about becoming liberated from your own thinking. I see this as an understanding that our thoughts can imprison us or can limit us. They can limit our compassion towards ourselves, towards others. They can limit our view of certain possibilities. They can limit our options for our day or for our life. They can limit our ability to move into acceptance or experience love.
I could see someone asking the question, well, aren't those things thoughts?
There's these different levels, right? There's this completely unconscious of my thinking, completely unconscious of how my thinking affects my life, right? One level. And then maybe a little bit deeper level, I'm becoming conscious of my thinking. I'm becoming conscious on how my thinking is limiting certain things. And then on a deeper level, we could talk about the 3 doors of liberation from the Buddhist teachings, which are emptiness, signlessness, and aimlessness. And those all directly address what you're talking about, how to get to this place where it's just existing without thinking.
I know a lot of teachers talk about people are a little bit hesitant to progress towards something like emptiness. Here, have some emptiness. It doesn't sound very appealing. I think that the concept of emptiness can be a little bit off-putting to people the first time they hear it. But then when you get in and hear the Buddhists talk about it, it sounds very appealing.
When someone maybe is first being introduced to these ideas and they hear the concept of emptiness, they immediately think, oh, I need to empty my mind, which is not actually what this teaching is about. The idea of emptiness is we are not anything. So that's the empty part. We are not anything except that which we are a combination of. Emptiness is not thinking that we're anything in particular. For example, I'm Sarah. That is not emptiness. Emptiness is not associating, identifying, interpreting your experience as I am who I am, I'm Sarah. Instead, it is coming to the realization that you're a combination of all these different things, of your ancestors, your combination of molecules, who you are is the food that you eat and you digest and how it moves through your cells, which in turn is made up of the sun, the rain, the dirt, and the seeds. I'm empty of self, but what I am is the rain and the dirt and the seeds, basically. The quote from an article I read the other day is, I am made only of non-me elements. So that's the emptiness. Empty of me, but made of non-me stuff.
One of my favorite books on this, which is On Having No Head by Douglas Harding. But it was very crucial the way that he described it to hear when people refer to me, they refer to the 5'7" version of me. it says, okay, if you investigate a little farther, and you could, take a microscope and go down to the molecular level of what I am. It's like, okay, well, is this still me or is this different? And then you zoom out to take a drone above my apartment. Is that me? And then you zoom out in a space shuttle to the Earth, and then you go farther out, and then you can go all the way to the concept of time as it began, and then it exists. And then what was it before there was time, And so it's like, are you always the 5'7" version of yourself, or are there many different layers to the experience of you?
People who learn this concept and own it, make it part of how they see the world and see themselves, they get a lot out of it. They experience release, they experience healing. I think it has something to do with not feeling like they need to crave or avoid certain things. And maybe this is something you can help me out with, because for me, when I learn these concepts, I don't get a lot out of it, and I don't disregard it. I don't not believe it. I know it's totally true. I've experienced it firsthand. To me, knowing that I'm made up of the sun, the rain, and the earth is like learning that bread is made up of yeast and flour and eggs. Like, okay, yeah. It's great, but how does that help me? So I'm really curious, for you being more steeped in Buddhist teachings than I am, like how that really translates to this healing and that people feel.
It's an interesting sentence to say, how does me understanding that I'm not me help me?
Yeah.
It's like, if you're looking for an experience in nothingness, then you're not looking in nothingness. If I had to pretend that I was a wise sage on a mountaintop, that's probably what I would say. That if you're looking into the concept of nothingness for an experience, you will be disappointed. I'm sitting inside today and I'm having a bad day. I'm in a bad mood. This actually happened to me earlier today, because I am in a bit of a lousy mood today, which happens for many, many reasons. I had a lot of ice cream last night. I think that may be it. But I was driving today, and this is how this concept helped me. There is this beautiful field that underneath all of the trees, the grass is green, and outside of all of the trees, the grass is yellow. Knowing that I am me, and I have thoughts, and I am 5'7", and I have a social security number, and I have all my stress. But then there can be an interesting phenomenon existing right beside me, such as this huge stark difference in the color. And these trees are dead, by the way. It's winter, so they have no leaves on them. And it is just the trippiest looking thing I've ever seen. To see, like, why is this beautiful green lush grass underneath the tree, and then over here is this yellow dead grass? What is this? Having a realization that an interesting thing like that is happening, and experiencing it is interesting, and having that brief breakup of all of the reasons that you're in a bad mood, and really experiencing firsthand the interesting phenomenon happening over there, that is what the concept of emptiness is, I believe. Because the minute that you negate and you don't pay attention on your commute, you don't see things that are interesting or beautiful or amazing, you fully dove into the concept of you. Mm-hmm. And you've let out this rapture of amazement that can happen outside of that. That's how I understand this concept. I really need to punctuate my day as many times as I can with these little glimpses of natural beauty, or talking to someone, really connecting with them, really letting myself dissolve. And
I think that's a great example. I love that you are in a bad mood and then you see something unique and beautiful in nature. That word dissolve. And that's exactly what this is about dissolving all this focus on yourself and realizing that, yes, these nature things are happening, but also feeling like I'm part of this. I'm happening too. I'm happening in this really beautiful, unique, natural way. Also, in this emptiness. I think that's a great example of the emptiness.
I don't know why they call it emptiness, to be honest with you. Well, because they say that there's lack of substance to it. And I think that it's because you are not there. So because you, as you experience yourself, is not there, it's empty of self. But really what it means is there's this fullness of experience more than ever. One of my favorite practices on having no head is the face to no face. So when you're talking to someone, look for your face. The thing is when I'm talking to you, well, right now it's different because I can see my face, but imagine that we're sitting out at a brewery and then I'm sitting across from you and I might be sitting there and you're telling something that is very interesting, but the very normal experience is I'm dipping out of what you're saying into, shit, I have to email that person back. I forgot all about that. I just reminded that. Or I told this really terrible joke yesterday that was just a bad joke. It just flopped and it keeps sticking in my head. Like, why did you tell that? You can't show your face around those people again. They're going to think you're so not funny. And those things come back and they're there. Or I need to get better at doing laundry. Why am I so bad at it? Things are piling up. But you're still there. You're not going anywhere. Your story's still happening. I just came in and out of the story 4 or 5 times in 5 seconds. But then when if I can bring on a concept to our experience, and that concept is, where is my face? Where is the face of the person having these thoughts? Or who are you talking to? Who is receiving these? You'll have this experience of really seeing somebody. I mean, really seeing them. Like, you melt fully and you just notice so many things. I remember the first time I had this experience with my dad, it was so trippy. I was like, wow, this is like, he like made me, you know what I mean? Like, here's this man that like, I felt like I was looking at him for the first time, really, like really seeing him. It's so trippy. When I listen to things like this and I listen to podcasts about it and books about it and stuff, it brings out those concepts into me. So I have them in my toolbox.
Why did they call it emptiness, right? Like, I totally relate to that because yes, it feels so full when you really step away from all this ego perception of who you are. You really, truly, for the first time, feel so full. And then this idea of you truly see someone for the first time when you are empty, when you are in this emptiness, you really can truly see someone. Because if you are caught up in who you are and what you did wrong or what you need to do, you're not fully able to see the other person. So that's definitely another example of how this concept and living this concept can be helpful. We could think that our thinking limits our ability to experience this emptiness because our thinking is always somehow acknowledging that we are separate from the rest. And unless you are thinking, I am not a separate existence from the sun, the rain, and the earth, but maybe pretty much every other thought you think is going to separate you in some way. Like you thinking that, I told a bad joke. The main word in that thought that is separating you is the word I. Whenever we use the word I, we are separating ourselves. The other door of liberation that the Buddhist teachings talk about is called signlessness. And this is actually my favorite of the 3. So signlessness, where there is a sign, there is a deception. And a good way to understand signlessness is to maybe use the word namelessness. A sign means we put a name on something. We put a meaning to something. As soon as we put a meaning to something, we are taking away from what it truly is. This practice of naming something, which we do, right? We name everything, causes us to forget the transformation of existence. It causes us to forget that the cloud becomes the rain, it becomes the river. Can we experience that cycle, the cloud changing into the rain and changing into the river? Can we experience that without the naming and really see that there isn't a difference between the cloud and the rain and the river? Signing, that naming, limits our ability to really see. And I think this can be helpful, definitely grieving process. When we've lost someone that we care about, for a moment, stop naming the different forms of that person and just see it as one continuous cycle. So this article I was reading was talking about how if you drink tea and then you have a conversation after you drink tea, then the tea becomes part of the conversation. So that's another way to think of these elements that are transforming and changing all the time. I had a bottle of kombucha before we are recording this episode, so we can think that this episode has a little bit of that kombucha in it. I mean, it definitely helps you take that step back and see that big perspective.
I've been learning a lot recently from James Lowe. And if people want to, they can go to YouTube and type in James Lowe. He's a Dzogchen teacher, and he's really incredible. So like outside my window right now, there's a lot of trees. Okay, so there is one tree. The tree has roots, right? We know that. And the tree has leaves. These are pine trees, so they have needles instead. Okay, so the needles aren't the tree. What about the limb? The limb isn't the tree. Well, what about the trunk? The trunk isn't the tree, and the roots aren't the tree. Well, that's all the tree. Well, then the water isn't the tree that it needs. The sunlight isn't the tree. It's all the tree. It's all interacting. So he uses the term co-emergence. So the tree is coming from nothingness, supposedly, like us, and we're both emerging together, and we're both in experience of one another, right? And again, it's like, well, why? Why does this matter? Why even talk about stuff like this? It's because if you think that you're a person and that's a tree, and you cut it down, you make paper from it, and that's it, and you cut off the awareness of the absurdity of the situation and just the intensity of the experience that you're actually in, if you cut that off, you get hyper focused on you become implicated in everything. And that, as a lot of Buddhists believe, is the cause of suffering. It is the unrelentless thought of me, and I am separate, and I am this, because then you just need a break. And you think you need a break. Okay, well, I need some chocolate and some wine at night, and then I just get a little bit of a break. And then tomorrow you're going to need the same chocolate and the same wine. And then the weekend you need something a little stronger. But it's here now. It's the emptiness. You can dip into it. And what I call the hot tub of experiences, when you sink into it, and you're just like, wow, this is really nice. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I will tell you firsthand, this is what happens. So in my meditations, I sometimes get to a point where I am without thinking. There's just no thinking that happens. The way I experience it is I've just completely bypassed my brain. And when you don't have any thinking to interpret your experience, so you're in such a place of non-thinking that you can't even interpret anything that's happening. What happens when you get to that point is you cannot differentiate your existence from the existence of what's around you. So I literally will experience that I am the fan, that I am the wall, that I am the table. And I mean, I know that sounds so cliche, but that's truly what happens. I don't know. Like, it makes me wonder about Buddhism. So yeah, there was this guy named Siddhartha who sat under the tree, and maybe he got to this point that, some of us have gotten to, bypassed his brain and then built a whole philosophy on it. I mean, I don't know what's real. Is it real that really I am the fan and I am the wall? Or is it just because it was a brain phenomenon? Like, I don't know. I'd be really curious what you think about that.
I love what Jack Kornfield said. Both are true. It is true that you have Buddha nature and you're eternal and you're all things. And it's also true you have a social security number. Siddhartha wasn't daft. He knew to put food in his mouth and not up his nose. He had full awareness of normal phenomenon happening in this realm of normal experience, right? And some teachers don't. Some teachers behave insanely in the guise of like, I'm beyond concept, right? And they sometimes misbehave. It is true that sometimes teachers misbehave under the guise of, oh, your egotism is in the way of me showing you the true path. Once you have quietened the mind a bit, and you can continue to quieten it more and more and more often, it opens up the space for you to then implement changes. And that's where the work really begins, I think. Once you have gotten your mind a bit quieter, and you distinguish from your thoughts, you distinguish from all the stuff that we're talking about today, and you're able to experience that, then you can go back to your concepts that you have about yourself, and with more objectivity. You understand yourself. You don't take yourself as seriously, I think, is the way that I think about it, right? I don't take myself as seriously, because if it's not real, it's like an illusion almost, right? It's this person that I've created in this persona. And I think that allows you to actually make really deep, lasting change.
Tara Brach talks about having a negative experience with a spiritual teacher, and she had to pull away. And so, it definitely happens. Our thinking limits our ability to experience signlessness or namelessness, because words are all names for things, ideas, and action. That's just like black and white. You're not in signlessness if you're in thinking with words. And so an invitation to our listeners is to spend about 5 or 10 minutes, sit down, close your eyes, and invite yourself to let go of naming anything, not naming your experience, not naming anything that you hear, feel, think, and just see what that's like. See what does that do for you when you give yourself a break from the naming. It's very liberating, I think. I find so much freedom in it. And I think it creates a space for new, beautiful experiences. The last here of the 3 doors of liberation from the Buddhist teachings is aimlessness. And basically, what aimlessness is about not having a goal, which Jacob, you've been mentioning several times here, that not saying, I'm trying to get to this, I'm trying to achieve that, whether it's in your meditation practice or in your life. And I know that's a really hard one to swallow. That's definitely a hard one for me to completely accept as being a very goal-oriented person. But I know that I am a little bit too goal oriented. And so I'm mindful of that. And I give myself opportunities to let go of that. But I think any practice in reducing your goal oriented ways is going to be helpful.
Sarah, let's say you want to paint your house. How do you decide what color to paint your house? Maybe you see a color on someone else's house and you're like, I want that color. And then you pull it up and you bring it home and you realize, oh, that actually doesn't look great on my wall. So then you have all these other shades. Let's say it's blue. Well, you can say by looking, you could have all these reasons why you like this specific color of blue, but it may just elicit a feeling. You don't exactly know why you like that specific color of blue, but it just quote unquote feels right. So I've been thinking about this concept a lot lately of if you kind of make everything in your life almost down to like an intuitive preference, I really have a deep, deep, deep belief that that is probably one of the best guides that you'll ever have.
The word that I use is insight. A lot of people use the word intuition. I use the word insight. And some of the best decisions or paths that I've gone on or changes I've made in my life have been because of insights. And I don't think that you can really gain these insights or these intuitions when you're caught up in lots of thinking. It's just too loud, right? You need to have that be quiet. And it's not just that it's too loud. It's just you're in the wrong frame of mind. You're going down a path that isn't conducive to having an insight. But having an insight is being in the still and being in the quiet, and it just comes through. And it's just like the path is already laid out. It's just whether you're going to take a step on that path or not. And again, we can't put a goal on it. You can't say, okay, I'm going to sit down and my goal is to have an insight. It's going to come when it comes. It's not something that you can really force.
It's okay to have goals. It's okay to have aspirations, and you do need to plan and you do need to do all that. But I think most people could probably do with a little bit more relaxation and allowance in their life, from what I can tell from talking to people. I know I sure can.
You know what? I will link this article in the show notes. One thing that I got out of reading this article is the reason that you don't want to have goals or you want to be in this aimlessness is what you are looking for or what you're aiming for is not outside of you. It's already inside of you, or it's already here. So that's one of the ideas. And also what occurred to me is aiming for something. Maybe the idea is that if we truly understand that we are constantly shifting form and being made of different elements, then really what is the point of achieving a goal at all? It simply is a new mixture of elements, no better or worse than the old mixture. And if there's no self, then all it is just a new mixture. So something to think about. We can consider that our thinking limits our ability to experience aimlessness because our thinking is associated with a goal, with an alteration, with a tweak in our experience. If you really observe your thoughts, a lot of them, most of them are really about how can I change the way things are. We usually don't have a thought that's like, yeah, everything's cool just the way it is. It's like, it's not usually what our thinking's like.
The Aware Mind podcast is a TSD Mindfulness production. Please visit our website at tsdmind.org. That is T as in tame, S as in soothe, and D as in dwell. Mind as in mindfulness.org. Check out our blog post for this episode with links to supplemental information such as worksheets you can use to put into practice the mindfulness skills shared in this episode. Also, please sign up for our newsletter and receive mindfulness tips. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at aware_mind_podcast. Thank you.